Natira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya 29, entitled Questions by King Parikshit. It's the last verse in chapter 8. Yat yat Parikshit Rishabha Pandunam Anuprichati Anupurvyena Tat Sarvam Akyatum Upachakrame Yat yat Parikshit Rishabha Pandunam Anuprichati Anupurvyena Tatsarvam Akyatum Upachakrame Yad Yat Parikshit Rishabha Pandunam Anuprichati Anupuryena Tatsarvam Akyatum Upachakrame Yad Yat Parikshit Rishabha Pandunam Anuprichati Anupuryena Tatsarvam Akyatum Upachakrame
Yad Parikshit Rishabha
Yad Yad Parikshit Rishabha
Pandunam Anuprichati
Pandunam Anuprichati
Anupurvyena Tatsarvam
Anupurvyena Tatsarvam
Agyatum Upachakrame
Akyatum Upachakrame Yad Yad Parikshit Rishabha Pandunam Anuprichati Anupuryena Tatsarvam Akyatum Upachakrame Yad Yad Parikshit Rishabha Pandunam Anuprichati Anupuryena Tatsarvam Akyatum Upachakrame Yad Yad Parikshit Rishabha Pandunam Anuprichati Anupuryena Tatsarvam Akyatum Upachakrame. Thank you, devotees. Okay. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. He also prepared himself. Oh, word for word, okay. Yat yat, whatsoever. Parikshit, the king. Rishabha, the best. Pandunam, in the dynasty of Pandu. Anuprichati, goes on inquiring. Anupurvyena, the beginning to the end. Tat, all those. Sarvam, fully. Agyatum, to describe. Upachakrame, he just prepared himself. Now we have translation. He also prepared himself to reply to all that King Parikshit had inquired from him. Maharaj Parikshit was the best in the dynasty of the Pandus, and thus he was able to ask the right questions from the right person. Purport. Maharaj Parikshit asked many questions, some of them very curiously, to know things as they are, but it is not necessary for the master to answer them in the order of the disciples' inquiries, one after the other. But Shukadev Goswami, experienced teacher that he was, answered all the questions in a systematic way as they were received from the chain of disciplic succession, and he answered all of them without exception. Thus in the Bhaktivedanta purports of the second canto, 8th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam entitled Questions by King Parikshit. Yad yad parikshit rishabha pandunam anuprikshati anupurvyena tatsarvam akyatum upachakrame. Translation. He also prepared himself to reply to all that King Parikshit had inquired from him. Maharaj Parikshit was the best in the dynasty of the Pandus, and thus he was able to ask the right questions from the right person. Maharaj, would you please enlighten us to the meaning of this verse?
The other day we were speaking about in the verse that Shukadev Goswami was Brahmarata and Parikshit Maharaj was Vishnurata, protected by Brahma, protected by Vishnu, and Brahmarata was taken as being protected by Krishna. And it was said that this was described in the Brahma Vaivarta Purana, how Shukadeva Goswami was protected by the Lord. And it's explained there that he was already a self-realized soul while he was in the womb of his mother. His mother was from the family of Jambala and Sage. So he was already a liberated soul while he was in the womb, but he did not want to come out of the womb because he was afraid he would fall into Maya, to become captured by the material energy. He didn't want to do that. But he was an impersonalist at that point. So Father Vyasadeva, perfectly qualified, told him, he also recited the transcendental pastimes of the Lord, and assured him that when he came out of the womb, he would not fall down because he would be, having heard Srimad Bhagavatam, he would be satisfied and not be interested in material things. But the child didn't trust his father because he thought he was a householder, married, children, so he didn't have enough faith in him. So Vyasadeva went to Dwarka and he convinced Krishna himself to come there and speak to his son. There's a very nice painting of this. Maybe you've seen it. Krishna comes from Dwarka, nicely dressed as a king, beautiful king, opulent clothing, and Vyasadeva is living in a very humble little cat, what do you call it? Cottage, yeah, little cottage. And no opulence at all. And his wife is there. She seems very pure-hearted, looking very pure-hearted. And so Krishna is speaking there to her and to the child in the womb. And so Krishna assures Shukadeva Goswami that if he comes out, he won't fall into Maya. He'll, having heard the Srimad Bhagavatam, will protect him from falling into material consciousness. So he comes out, and he took sannyas immediately. He left home without any discussion. He left. And then finally he came to Namishranya, or to the bank of the Ganges, where Parikshit Maharaj was sitting, and he became the speaker. He passed on the Srimad Bhagavatam that he heard from his father. So that's how he became Brahmarata.
Thank you, Maharaj. That's really nice. I was thinking during your comment about how, yes, Shukadeva Goswami was visited by Krishna when he was in the womb, and also Maharaj Parikshit was too, by Krishna entering into the womb, protect him from the Brahmastra from Ashvatthama. So both blessed by the presence of Krishna, and we can see that both were qualified to receive Srimad Bhagavatam and speak Srimad Bhagavatam by the qualified inquiries of Maharaj Parikshit, Shukadev Goswami. Now he begins to answer, after this chapter, he begins to answer the questions of Maharaj Parikshit, but not in some straightforward method. He does it in a different kind of way that elucidates more pastimes of Krishna and a deeper understanding of matter and spirit. And this is delightful for the devotees to also recite these questions and these answers. So we always try to read Srimad Bhagavatam so we can continue to understand it. And from my understanding, it's unlimited what we can understand. And so we'll never fully reach fully be satisfied by just reading the Srimad Bhagavatam once, twice, 3 times. It's something that we can unlimitedly read because it's the words of, because it's the descriptions of Krishna and Krishna Katha, and we can continue to relish that, even though we might have heard it 1 or 2 times. The devotee doesn't care to. He wants to continue to hear about Krishna, no matter what part of the Vedas it's from, Srimad Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita, or just simply hearing the philosophical foundation for Krishna consciousness. It's always presented in a different way by each individual person. And by hearing that, we can also learn how to present it to others in a different way and maybe in a more appealing way. So they might glean more from the text and might understand the philosophy more. And so Prabhupada also highlights here that these teachings were received through the chain of disciplic succession. And so for most of us here at the temple, we've decided to take part in that chain of disciplic succession by taking initiation from spiritual master, as mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, text 34, how one should approach a teacher, a spiritual master, because he can impart knowledge unto you, and he can grant you service, a devotional service, so you can progress in spiritual life. And he can do this because he himself has seen the truth, and he has seen the truth because Krishna has granted him to see it. As we hear, it's only by devotional service, Bhakti Mama Vijananti, that we can enter into this loving relationship with Krishna. And Krishna, he doesn't just leave us hanging. If we render devotional service to him, he will give us knowledge on how to actually come back to him. And of course, that could take the form as surrendering to the spiritual master and following his instructions submissively. And I've heard from many, just from Prabhupada's story about how his spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he asked him to, gave him the first time he met him, gave him a instruction to go and preach in the West, preaching in the English language. And Prabhupada, he wasn't able to follow that instruction immediately, but after hearing that and eventually taking initiation 9 or 10 years later, he started to imbibe the mood more and more of his spiritual master and begin to think about how he might execute that order. So he started, of course, we're hearing in the Srila Prabhupada's Lilamrita and after Mangalarti about how he was writing back to Godhead and distributing that even in times of great stress from his family or from his country in situations of war. He continued to publish that. And if he didn't publish it, he always desired to write more. And he wasn't, he was persistent in his desire to serve his spiritual master in the chain of disciplic succession. And so he studied and he understood more and more what that meant. And finally his spiritual master came to him in a dream and asked him to take sannyas. And he came twice. And the first time he didn't listen, but the second time he got the point from his spiritual master, and he took sannyas after developing that desire over many years. In some way he did that. And also we can learn from Srila Prabhupada how we can also cultivate those desires, cultivate wanting to follow the instruction of the spiritual master perfectly, even though we might not be able to do it right away. We can think, okay, in the future, I really want to do this. And we know from past experiences that things that we thought were not possible can become possible. And so we can take lesson from our own firsthand experience that things can change in Krishna consciousness, and we can follow all the orders of our spiritual master, all the orders. And we can take, we can have courage that that's going to happen for each and every one of us. if we continue to cultivate that spiritual desire, and at the same time try to detach from the material desires that we might have in our hearts. Of course, we learn from from the chain of disciplic succession that the way to purify those desires and cultivate spiritual desires is by chanting the Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So maybe we can churn the nectar a little bit. Does anybody have any thoughts or questions or comments or reflections? Yes, Radhastali?
Hare Krishna. I was thinking about how Prabhupada in his purport here, he is saying that the spiritual master might not answer a disciple's questions directly. And I was thinking about so many times Prabhupada would answer his any questions he would receive indirectly. Can I share a couple examples?
Please.
So one I was thinking of was when I was reading in Prabhupada Nectar by Satarup Goswami or Swami, and he wrote this story of how a man asked Srila Prabhupada, "Why are you striving to open so many temples when you have so many you need to maintain already?" And he he answered indirectly by saying, he said, "Well, you is that your wife next to you?" And he said, like, he was just confused, this man, and he said yes. And he said, "Well, you have children?" um and he said no. He says, "Well, you want children, right?" He says yes. And he says, "Well, in the same way, um uh I want to open these temples." I'm sorry if I'm wording this differently, but basically Prabhupada was saying that in the same way that someone would want to have children, he wants to open these temples. Um, I'll have to share this again later. Just I'll have to bring the book with me. But it was just very indirect, and it was, he answered in the way that that man needed to hear. It wasn't just like, "Yeah, I want to open these temples because of this reason." But I'll share the other story just quickly. Um, the other one I was thinking of is when a reporter asked, it was a female reporter, and she had a very short skirt on, and she challenged Prabhupada and said, "Well, why are you all bald?" And Prabhupada said, "Well, why do you have bare legs?" And then uh, then Prabhupada continued to say, "It's better to have warm legs and a cool head. You need a cool head to understand this Krishna consciousness." I really like that, how he answered that. I don't know if it relates to how Prabhupada was speaking in this purport, but that's kind of my reflection on that. And then one last reflection was my Gurudev. He once said that sincere questions arise from following the spiritual master's instructions. That always rings in my head when I hear this part of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Hare Krishna. Those are nice pastimes through the Prabhupada and how he didn't necessarily answer directly all the questions that his disciples had, but he actually did answer them, and it's for us to think about and try to understand. Is there any other questions? Yes, Prabhu? Nanda Prabhu?
Sorry, I just want to clarify that this doesn't at all devaluate the point you were making, but this in the Prabhupada is saying something else. He's saying, I'll just reread it because he's saying it is not necessary for the master to answer them in the order of the disciples' inquiries, one after the other. Like he asks questions in a certain order. So the master doesn't have to answer them in that exact order. But Shukadeva Goswami, experienced teacher that he was, answered all the questions in a systematic way as they were received from the chain of disciplic succession. So I was just thought, not that it those aren't nice points that you made, but I'm just saying it's a different point that's being made in the purport. So I just thought I'd clarify that. And on that point, we can see that there is a systematic way to read Srimad Bhagavatam. There's unscrupulous people who may jump to the 10th canto and want to understand that portion of the Bhagavatam, but they don't care for the rest. But there's a systematic way in which we're supposed to hear the Srimad Bhagavatam or understand the scriptures. There's certain, things that we have to understand before we can understand higher truths. Just like when you're studying math, you don't jump to PhD level. You have to understand basic principles in the beginning, like this. So Shukadeva Goswami Maharaj Pratisha may have asked many different questions, not in a kind of random, not exactly systematic way, but because Shukadeva Goswami was a qualified teacher, he answered them in the way that we can actually understand by explaining it properly. Like, just like sometimes you're preaching, you're talking to people, they may have so many questions, but I need to start with, you're not this body, because that's the first thing he needs to understand before we get into these other topics, other questions. So that's something that a conscious preacher or teacher takes into consideration, that there are certain things someone needs to understand before they can understand other things. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for your clarification, Prabhu. And on the point of preaching Krishna consciousness, we have to be careful what we share to people, because we could possibly make an offense, especially if we're trying to instruct them on things they can't understand. Is there anything else? Thanks for attending Srimad Bhagavatam class. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Manchakalpa Shribhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Paritanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha.